All right, here we go. Today is Monday, April the 20th. Can you believe this? So all we have is 2 lessons this week, 2 lessons next week, and 2 lessons the first week in May, and then we have exams. This is insane. I think we can do it. You're doing great, hopefully. The majority of you are. Okay, a couple things to share. This is a picture. This is too adorable. This is a picture of proto-declaratives. This man was sitting in the stands, and this was a year ago, and his little niece or daughter, somebody kept bringing him toys. And it was proto-declaratives. They'd bring a little toy, and he kept it all on his lap, one at a time. She'd walk all the way down the aisle. It was so cute. Okay, next one. Here. Supply a restless toddler with a box and crayons. Give them 20 minutes, an hour. It's insane. They can just sit in the box and entertain themselves. Go for it. Scientists have recently determined that it takes approximately 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in the brain, unless it's done with play, in which case it takes between 10 and 20 repetitions. So children just playing. And I really wish that you could have watched children playing, like what we were supposed to do, the observations, because there's so much you can learn from watching children play. But it's not going to happen this semester. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 10. So we left off, approach 1 was Piaget, and we did all of Piaget. He had 5 different areas of study for children as preschoolers, and now we're looking at approach number 2, which is information processing. For information processing, the computer works like a brain. I'm sorry, the other way around. The brain works like a computer. So I'm going to hold this picture up, and what I need you to do is pause this. Sorry, my hair is in my face. I know I'm not supposed to touch my face. Pause it and draw this little flow chart. Okay, so there it is. Pause it, draw it, and I will explain it. All right, so you have it in your notes now, and what you should be looking at is something comes in from the left side, and those are your senses. You see, hear, smell, taste, touch, something, the child senses something. Then it goes to the register. Yeah, they register, something happened. It goes into short-term memory in their brains, and then they have these control processes that are above it. Control processes, rehearsal, coding, decisions, retrieval strategies, okay, that work with that short-term memory. And the short-term memory has to decide, do I need to immediately do something? That's a response output. Versus, should I go and store this in long-term memory? So your working memory is constantly deciding what it needs to do with all this information it's getting, okay? And so that's how it works. And they just say with little children, we just need to have them practice and practice so that they can get better and better at having their brains work. And it said, why are there so many different levels with children? Well, it's mainly because of this. Because some children's brains, they practice and practice. Their families have them practice things. And other children, nobody practices anything with them. And so why would their brain get better at working together? And so that's why the levels seem to be uneven. A great example of this is like your working memory taking something to long-term memory. That's what nursery rhymes are for, and nobody does them anymore. Like children should know Jack and Jill and Humpty Dumpty and Little Miss Muffet, and if you do them over and over and over enough times, then their little brain works on it, and they work on memorizing it, and they work on putting it in long-term memory and pulling it out. If I were in class, I'd ask you to recite these, and we'd find that there are a lot of kids that can, and there's other kids who are like, no, nobody ever taught me any of these. Well, you be the parent or the preschool teacher, whoever, teach children these little things to memorize. Another amazing example is fairy tales. So I do the same thing in class. I would open this up, and I would say, okay, how many of you know these stories? Like you could tell this story without reading the book. Do you know the story of Cinderella, the Ugly Duckling, Little Red Riding Hood? Do you know these stories? Could you tell them without having to read all the pages? The Princess and the Pea, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, The Emperor's New Clothes. These are all little stories that when we were growing up, they would read them to us over and over so many times that, yeah, I can tell those stories. But researchers are kind of worried because what's taking the place of these things with this next generation of children? So do what you can. In other words, come up with something for these kids because that's what makes your brain work. I do share this crazy example because it's true. I can name all the linking verbs in the English language because I had to memorize them in 9th grade. Here we go. Am, is, are, was, were, been, being, be, have, has, had, do, does, would, shall, should, will, would, can, could, may, might, must. Who cares? They're all the linking verbs in the English language. But I had to memorize them. They made my brain work, and I had to work on short-term memory, long-term memory, how to process, where am I going to put that? Somewhere they put it in my brain. I'll be on my deathbed, and I'll go, oh, you want the linking verbs? Sure, I can give those to you. Right. Okay, so that's just basic. They also say memory gets better if moms or dads, this is all in the same category, memory gets better if people practice it. And so moms and dads can ask WH questions, who, what, where, when, why. So ask the child, who did you play with today? What did you play? What activity did you do? What did you have for your snack? And so the child is working on taking their short-term memory and working with it like, oh, do I still remember what I had for lunch? Mom's going to ask me. I need to pay attention in my little life, that kind of thing. So it's really cool that we can do these with our children to make their memory work better. And the other example that I give students is your working memory. Your short-term memory is considered working. Well, imagine this. I'm walking across Miami's campus and I'll see one of you. I'll see you next spring or next fall, we'll say. I only got to see you for, what was it? I don't know, 4 weeks, we'll say. And then I'll look and I'll like, oh my gosh, I know that student. I had that student class. And I can't remember your name. So I wave, hi, And then I'm sitting at dinner with my husband and my son, and all of a sudden I go, oh, Sharon. And they're looking at me like, what? I said, Sharon, that was a student I saw this morning. Well, did I keep trying to figure out her name? No, I had given it up that morning when I walked across campus, and I just knew that I recognized her, but I didn't know her name. But my working memory was not giving up on me. And so it kept working and working and working, and sure enough, it remembered her name. And there it was, like 6 hours later. So that's how we know these brains really are working. And we have to make our children's brains work. And we need to do it from the day they're born by reading all those books and to have them memorize little things. It'll be great. So make sure you're doing this. It makes their brains stronger, gives them more cognitive development. Okay, then it goes on to generic, episodic, and autobiographical. These are just kind of memories. Generic is, they call them scripts. Like a child knows is scripted what you do at a restaurant. They know, oh, you go up and you order, and then you wait for your food, let's say like McDonald's. It's scripted. They've done it enough time that it's in their memory, they know how to do it. Versus episodic. Episodic is individual memories, like they walk in and they go, oh, I've been here before. And it'll be like a year later, and you're like, yeah, we brought Grandma to this restaurant last year. And they remember this one episode of being like, yeah. That's called episodic. And then the last one is autobiographical memory. And for this one, you know this, you learned this. It's the child's life history. When you talk about what you did today, that's so good for their memory, because they will take some of those things again till the day they die. They're like, oh my gosh, remember when Charlie and I were playing in the creek and Sarah fell in? And they'll remember it. And it made it into long-term memory. It was important enough to keep. It was encoded in such a way that they could find it later in their life. And that's all the stuff on approach number 2, which would be information processing, suggesting that your brain works just like a computer to encode things and pull it out and do that. All right, then the next one, the last one, is approach number 3. And this is all we're doing today, are these 2 approaches. Approach number 3 is intelligence, which is psychometric, which you know is measuring. You learned that the other time, and Vygotsky. So psychometric would be like intelligence testing. So you learned that. It's like the Bailey scale, but it would be for like, now we go to the next age range for an IQ test. I have one here. I'm just going to kind of hold it up. It is, these are the type of tests they would ask kids some of these kind of questions. And it goes through categories. It's like communication, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, can they string beads, things like that is what they're measuring. And so they'll test little kids to see if they seem to be on track for where they should be as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old. Kindergarten readiness, they all have to take a test for kindergarten readiness. Okay, then comes an amazing slide. It says, family life has its strongest influence in early childhood. Bigger influence than mom's IQ. Yeah, so we're comparing nature versus nurture, and they're saying what you do with that child, nurture, is more important, sorry about that, than nature, the IQ they were born with. With that, there's an amazing, really cool pages that you need to read about a little boy named Alexander. Okay, so I want you to read this, and then it's going to be part of today's activity. That you're going to need to write a few sentences about what you think about this, kind of like not a book report, but what are some important things that you got out of it. So make sure you read all those pages. That's why this part's going to be pretty short today. All right, so we got that. There's another video about Little Puppy. Make sure you watch that. And then we finish off with Vygotsky. And Vygotsky, you just read the slide. It says, remember zone of proximal development? Yeah, that should be review for you. They're saying the test itself is dynamic. It's a learning situation, unlike an IQ test. An IQ test is what have they already learned. Vygotsky, it's almost like scaffolding, you know it as zone of proximal development, and then go to the next slide. It says scaffolding. What is scaffolding? It's where a person helps you, temporary support to help the child master the task. And it says learning to play pool. Like every little child out there, a billiard table, like who's got one of those? But anyway, that's what the book example is. Where usually, a lot of times people will wrap their arms around the child and help them. I'm pretending like I'm using a cue stick. They'll do the same with baseball. A lot of times you wrap your hands around, you put your hands on the bat, you're scaffolding. You're giving children a little support to help them with it. Well, it's the same thing with their thought processes. Give them some help along the way. Talk to them and help them out to see, what do you think is going to happen next? And, all those kind of questions. From there, it goes on to autism. And it's really hard to do this without being in the classroom. But it's the last little section here. And we have these story cards that I would normally have you do in class. I'm just going to hold them up. But normally we would cut these apart, and as you can see, there's a ball at the top, and it's there, then it rolls down, it plumps in the water. So you would get these 4 cut apart, and you would have to put them in order. Okay, and they do this with little children. Then the same thing with this one. Little kid, ice cream, holds it away, she steals the ice cream cone, and he's sad. The last one is the key to the whole thing. For autism, what they have found is this set of story cards, cut them apart, have the child put them in order. Autistic kids can't put this in order. The reason they can't is because there's 2 things going on. So let's go back. 1, ball falling, one thing. Ice cream cone, one thing. In this one, there's a flower and a teddy bear. So there's 2 things going on, and an autistic child generally can't put these in order. And so what researchers suggest, and again, this is on the information, intelligence type testing thing, a theory of autism. They're saying that it's nature. They're saying that children who are autistic are born without this section of their brain. And it's always very questionable. Nobody's got the right answers to any of this stuff. But that would be your information that, as I said, I wish so much that we could do it in class because it's a lot more fun to I hand you the story cards and make you put them in order. Okay, from there it goes to language, and we're going to do that on Wednesday. So we're going to wait and do that Wednesday. Look at the syllabus. We are right on schedule. I put a syllabus in the files, and it says on Wednesday we're going to finish chapter 10, and then we're going to start chapter 11. Chapter 11 has really fun videos. Chapter 11 is good. Today there will be an activity, as always, an assignment, we'll say. But you need to read the Alexander little research study. So you need to read that, and there's some question regarding that, and there's also some review questions from last Wednesday. And you just need to answer those questions just like we always do. I'm sorry that this is the way we're doing it, but it seems to work because the majority of you are doing amazing. You're doing it. You're like, okay, how hard is this? Just watch that lady teach. Make sure you write down the slides because that's important too. And I'll see you on Wednesday. All right? Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.